And we are off. So yeah, hopefully we can have quite a race here. So starting off with City Escape, first thing to really note in this run is that in the first minute of gameplay there is an immediate opportunity for the first major skip of the run. Both players have a shot at landing City Escape skip, and I do say a shot because this skip is very difficult mechanically to try and hit, and even if you perform it correctly, there is still a bit of a random element insofar as whether it's actually going to perform correctly and work. So once our two guys get past the first checkpoint, they're going to want to roll down the next hill with as much speed as possible, avoid the speed pads next to the ramp, because they actually reset your speed to a lower value than what's required, and if they get the right type of ramp jump, if they indeed go for the skip. Okay, Kid's foregoing it, let's see if Tylenol goes for it. He's going for it, and unfortunately he doesn't get it, so if he had gotten that skip he would have instead been zipped to the right and he would fall through virtually the next half of the stage. And that would save an immediate 30 seconds if that had happened. But as it is right now, we're just going to be seeing both of them go through the rest of a skipless City Escape, which is a lot of slopes which are wont to try and throw Sonic off them and give him a lot of unwanted airtime, and especially this downward skyscraper section, which is a little tricky to exit with a lot of speed. You can go down it quickly, but exiting with speed is a bit of a tricky matter. Kid attempted the strat to exit it with full speed, but his position was a little off at his jump, so it cut a lot of his momentum. Tylenol also attempts it, but I think he just was not holding up on the control stick by the looks of things. So both of our runners are roughly in the same place, Kid being a couple of seconds ahead, and they're both entering the truck section. And this is a section that really exemplifies what Sonic's movement is all about. The movement with Sonic in this game is best done by using the spin dash mechanic. Spin dashing is a lot faster than running, but the way that you want to use the spin dash depends on the type of surface you're on. If you're on flat ground or you're going uphill, you want to rapidly uncharge and recharge your spin dashes, but if you're going downhill like this, you just want to let a single spin dash go because you'll continue to accelerate while you're in the ball form. It's pretty much how you would expect ball mechanics to work, and it's actually relatively well designed.
Just made it.
So both players getting out of City Escape with fairly similar times, a 2:07 and a 2:10, so this is definitely closely fought so far. And they're now just going to be entering the first boss of the run, and we're going to see their different approaches to starting this boss.
I'm out here. Finally decided to show up, eh? Okay, bring it on!
Spider Trick Bigfoot reporting to headquarters. Intruder has been located.
Copy that.
So Bigfoot is a boss that, as you can see, is performed by hitting his cockpit several times, 4 times to be exact, and you can use either the front boxes or the back boxes to obtain hits. The front boxes are a little quicker if you can consistently get them, but it's tricky and there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. So Kid is picking up a couple of seconds on Tylenol here by the looks of things. But as far as the time variance in these runs go, the stage that Kid is entering is the first instance where there can really be an upset between the two runners. These are the Knuckles stages, and these are stages where you need to find 3 pieces of the Master Emerald, and the locations are randomly generated, and there are approximately 100 pieces you can get per stage. So there's a lot of RNG involved here, and a lot of memorization. Tylenol got a pretty good first piece, and he's already on his way to getting his second piece, which he's struggling a little bit to find. He's got it. So both runners got their second pieces. Again, this is still fairly close. Tylenol going back down to the bottom, and Kid needing to go over to the opposite side of the stage. So Tylenol does get a better Wild Canyon, and as a result he pulls ahead. As I say, this is something that can be seen in a lot of races in this game, that one player can be ahead for a few stages, but then if someone gets a good Knuckles stage, it can do quite a lot to pull back the relative time loss if the leader doesn't get a particularly good Knuckles stage. So we've seen Sonic and Knuckles in this run so far, and now we get to see Tails as well. But Tails is very different to Sonic and Knuckles in this game, since he is played in a mech. And this mech's movement and mechanics are very different from Sonic and Knuckles. The bulk of Tails' gameplay is through using this Vulcan cannon and homing shots like this for combat, and as far as the movement goes, The problem with Tails' mech is that it really doesn't like to take corners. Prison Lane is the first Tail stage, and there are a lot of right-hand corners in this stage. The only way for the runners to efficiently navigate these is to actually jump around the corners, as you see Tylenol doing just there. The reason this is done is because if you try and corner too sharply on the ground with Tails' mech, you'll just lose all of your speed, and this mech's acceleration is not very good, so it takes quite a while to get back up to max speed. But if you take the corners while you're in the air, then you don't actually lose all your speed like that, so you can maintain your ground speed by doing all your cornering in the air and then still be running in a straight line by the time you do that. And that's what they're going to be doing, not only in this stage, but in all the Tails stages if they need to change direction more than gradually. So Prison Lane's main gimmick is all these enemies that are guarding lock gates. There are tons of periodic lock gates throughout this stage, and they're guarded by specific enemies that need to be destroyed to get them to open quicker. There's a couple of spots where you actually want to kill enemies at specific times so that you can exploit falling gates to skip small elevators. One of those has already been, and there's another at the very end of the stage. So both runners having pretty okay prison lanes. As we see on Tylenol's screen, this gate is guarded by the two enemies that were in the distance. Good example of what I mean about needing to destroy enemies to unlock gates. Doing pretty well to avoid that beetle trying to get an early shot on him, because it's pretty difficult to exit that elevator quickly without getting sniped there. And you can see on Tylenol's screen that you can even target enemies through walls, because the laser targeting system doesn't really care about whether you actually have a direct line of sight to an enemy. It more cares about your position relative to the enemy, and all of the different enemy targeting positions are just different. There's no real rhyme or reason to it, it's just that certain enemies require certain positions, so there's some memorization involved here as well with knowing where you can actually shoot some enemies from to speed the stage up a little. So Kid wasn't having a very good time there with the attempted gate hop, so he instead had to take the elevator, but they're still both closing out with a sub 2 minute prison lane. Gap is like widening a little bit, but once again this run has so many pitfalls both in the execution stages and in the presence of RNG that this sort of race really cannot be called until it's over. So Tylenol's starting Metal Harbor by skipping the first loop of the stage, which is pretty nice, and he's going to be shortly coming up to Sonic's first upgrade of the run, the Light Dash. And that will allow him to perform the Light Dash across Trails of Rings. It's possible to skip this upgrade, but it's not really faster across the course of a run to do so. Kid's also going to be coming up to the Light Dash in a little bit. He's taking a bit of a different route across that gap there, which can potentially be worth it if executed very well, so it shouldn't just be immediately written off. So they've both got their Light Dashes, and now they both just need to progress to the end of the stage. Tylenol's going to go for another loop skip here. Nicely done. A little bit of care needs to be taken on that loop to enter it in the correct way and in the correct spot to avoid either getting launched into the water or the camera inverting, so in a lot of spots in this run there is more going on and there's more things at play than there first appears to be. He gets a very nice rocket platform skip using what's called a spin dash jump. The mechanics for Sonic are very, very momentum based, and if you perform a jump from a sloped surface, you do gain a lot more height, so if you combine that with the momentum of having a lot of speed from spin dashing, you can get insane amounts of height to skip this rocket platform and other sections of the game. So Tylenol's just going to be going for one last loop skip. He doesn't have a lot of momentum, but he still makes it with the camera not being situated well, so that was very nicely survived. Hopefully Kid gets the same sort of thing here. Well, hopefully he gets a cleaner loop skip, but still makes it. It's really not desirable to have the camera not cooperating here. Yep, he's got a good camera, so yeah, you can see how close he was to missing that, but at the very least he could see where he needed to go in order to not die. That sort of thing is a lot more difficult to gauge if the camera isn't playing ball.
Barely made it.
So our players are going to be coming into the Shadow 1 boss fight now, and this boss is going to use a trick called Storage, which is simply the game's way of differentiating actions that are on the same button. Everything's on the B button in this game, so if you hold the B button to start charging the spin dash, you are actually somersaulting as far as the game is concerned in the time before the spin dash comes out. And that allows you to inflict damage even when the somersault animation isn't playing, so that's what the runners are doing to Shadow right here. Shadow is unfortunately a little random and does a high jump there, and Tylenol almost has a nasty accident with the light dash triggering in an unhelpful spot. Again, all the actions are on the same button and it can be really unhelpful. Let's see how Kid does with this fight. He's waiting a little for Shadow to come near him, which works. And then he is just choosing to homing attack him from behind. Now, that's the intended way of taking the fight, that you can either cheese hits with storage, or you can just attack him from behind, in which case he won't react to your attempts to attack him. So now we're going to be entering Green Forest, and this stage it's difficult. There are a lot of slopes and dips in this stage, where if you're going too fast over hills, the game will just launch you into the air, same as City Escape, but there are a lot of these kind of things in Green Forest. So the time loss can really rack up pretty quickly. Tylenol's got a pretty clean start, which is nice. And he's going to be getting onto the first loop skip of the stage, which is coming up after this next spring and vine section. But this loop skip is quite a bit more difficult than it looks, so let's see how he performs here. The camera is not situated very well for this, and it also inverts near the end of the skip unless you have a very specific position. So, okay, he just about makes it. That was scary at first, but he still made it, which is the important thing. And now he just needs to approach what we call the potential tree run section of the stage. There is potential here for both runners to use a very difficult skip by getting on the side of this tree and just running up the tree rather than using the springs to get up it. But as I mentioned, it is very difficult and technical, and nobody aside from like the top runners of the game consistently go for it and get it. So being that this is a race and both runners really need to try and keep up their pace, I definitely can't blame either of these guys for not even attempting it. Just starting the trick is not enough. It's a very difficult trick to execute all the way and even get a safe exit from, so both of them are just opting to climb the tree normally. Tylenol getting a very nice bungee skip there, and also skipping this last loop with some nicely precise placed spin dashes. And it looks like he's going to be finishing out with a time of about 140, probably like 141. Yeah, dead on the money. So let's see how Kid does with his bungee skip. He's choosing to skip the checkpoint and go on the right, which thankfully doesn't punish him, as there is actually an invisible wall on the right hand side there. His spin dash for that final loop skip was a little bit misplaced though, resulting in having not quite enough momentum to safely go for, so he bailed out of that halfway through, and I do think that was the correct choice. Like, I would not be feeling confident about finishing that loop skip in the position that he was in. That's really what a lot of racing this game comes down to, being able to weigh and calculate risk and know when you need to bail out of something that you're attempting. So Tylenol's going to get Knuckles' first upgrade, the Shovel Claws, and this allows Knuckles to dig underground, which is necessary in this stage since you're always guaranteed to get a piece 3 that is hidden underground, as it's the game's way of checking that you've picked up the Shovel Claws. He's had a pretty nice piece 1, and this leads to a piece 2 that's on top of Pumpkin Mountain. The game's always going to give you a piece 2, which is at least moderately far away from where your piece 1 was. And then piece 3 has a much more indeterminate location. So Tylenol's 2 pieces in whilst Kid starts, and his third piece is Side-Eye Pumpkin. These are really nice pieces, actually. Church to Pumpkin to still near Pumpkin. And Kid has the same first piece as Tylenol, so still marks the spot. He's a little uncertain about where to go for this though, so losing some time here. I'm not sure he actually knows where to go for this piece. Like, he can tell that it's around here as the radar is green and now it's yellow, so he knows he's getting closer, but he clearly doesn't know exactly where this piece is located. Come on, Kid, keep going up. Keep going up, buddy. In the meantime, Tylenol is starting, yeah, he's found it. He's starting his mission streak. So a couple of Tales' stages are entirely cycle-based, and this is one of them, which is both a bit of a blessing and a curse, considering Tails' movement is a little limited, and his movement is very difficult. In order to get the fastest cycles in Mission Street, you need to move very well throughout the stage, and as soon as he picks up Tails' upgrade here, the booster, which allows him to hover, he has an attempt at this very tight hover jump onto this falling weight, which can even save a cycle later in the stage. And he has it, nice. he did a very nice pause buffer there to get two A inputs close together. Like, you jump and then you hold the A button again to initiate the hover, but if you do it very close to your first input, it actually gives you extra momentum. But in order to make that wait cycle, you need to do that very, very precisely. So that was nice. He actually struggles at the top of this cycle though, so... oh no. So he was on pace for what we call the 0 cycle, because it's faster than the cycle we previously thought was the fastest obtainable. But that actually cost 2 entire cycles. That's big. He just went from 0 cycle to 2nd cycle pace.
Yeah, this is perfect.
He's still ahead, clearly, but if Kid can improve a cycle on that, then he is going to claw back some time here. So this really remains to be seen how these two are going to play out the stage. Tylenol is like not out of the woods yet either. Because although he made that initial jump at the start, the cycle that he is really trying to meet is at the end of the stage here after exiting this elevator. You can see that there are these barrels going up and down. The barrel at the back end that just went up is the one that he was really trying to meet. And so he's needing to wait for that to come back down here and take it. So this is actually looking like this is a 3rd cycle now. So relatively speaking, that was a lot of time to be lost there. So Kid can potentially save back their time here. He goes for a very late hover jump there and actually gets it. Nice. So both our racers have the weight jump, and Kid is in a position to be saving a lot of time on Tylenol now, up to 30 seconds if this goes very well for the rest of Kid's stage. It does need to go very well for the rest of Kid's stage though, because from here on out after this checkpoint, the amount of time that a runner can afford to lose in movement between here and the cycle spot is honestly not much more than a second. And there have already been some minor mistakes, so he's going to need to go very fast from here on out in order to meet the 0 cycle. It's probably not possible after that enemy hit, but he should still be on very nice pace for getting the 1st cycle, which can be a good at least 10 seconds faster. Yeah, so at the back there, that's the 0 cycle going up there. He should have really committed for going for the front end there, because I mentioned about going up the back end of the platforms. If you just miss the back end as he did there, you can go for the front end and get what we call a half cycle. So he could have actually ended up with 0.5 cycle. Tylenol though, starting his aquatic mine. I didn't see any free pieces in his intro cutscene. I could have missed some maybe. It looks like he's still got a good first piece. Oh yeah, he does have this piece, nice. And he has container on the shelf, which is a good 2nd piece. It's just directly across from where he is. Going up to collect it, and let's see what his 3rd piece is. This looks like it's in the ghost room. Wow, this is an extremely good set. The ghost path being a little tricky to collect, but the actual placement of the pieces, that was really, really nice. 3 piece followed by container, followed by ghost room. Wow, I would love to get that in a run. So Kid is catching the 1st cycle, so although he did lose a cycle based on what he could have gotten, he still saved a little bit of time over Tylenol, so he's clawing it back a little. Although after that aquatic mine from Tylenol, Kid's definitely got his work cut out for him to continue saving any time. Tylenol is entering Route 101, but it's a fairly basic driving stage, which doesn't have too much going on in it, so I'll definitely focus on Kid for now and see how his aquatic mine is. He also gets a free piece. I can see that wooden window on a roof. So that's his 1st piece, so the green ping piece that he's got, that is the one that's right there. He's going to go up and grab switch level 3 first, since you always want to clear the water in this stage so you can move through the rest of the stage more evenly. Now he's probably got a piece 2 in the narrow path. Yeah, in the triangle skull. Again, the game's always going to give you a piece 2 that is at least fairly far away from your piece 1, and this is pretty much the farthest main area in the stage. So you're very likely to get pieces here after a 1st piece like that. His 3rd piece is skull facing the other way, which is in the... No, it's not in... I made this mistake in my race just yesterday, I think. It's not in the ghost room, it's right in the middle of the stage. So that's a really nice last piece to get. Again, I don't think he knows exactly where he's going for this, but... Okay, yeah, he's in about the right spot now. Come on, Kid, you're right on top of it. You got this. There he is. I think he's found it. There we go. So both runners actually getting pretty nice piece sets in Aquatic Mine. Varying degrees of execution and grabbing them, definitely, but I wouldn't really have objected to getting either of those piece sets in a run. So the RNG is treating both of our guys not too badly so far. So both of our runners are going to be in Route 101 now, and as I say, this is driving. The main thing to remember in this stage is that you want to be snaking, which Tylenol's doing here, as much as possible. As long as you initiate a drift and then keep wiggling back and forth, then you can actually go faster than the intended speed limit, because you have the normal driving speed and the boost speed. And as long as you're drifting like this, you won't actually go below the boost speed unless you are forced to slow down by something like a hill or an obstacle that you hit. So that allows you to go much faster throughout most of the stage, which both runners are going to be exploiting to full effect. Tylenol's reaching the end of Route 101 now, as Kid is about 30 seconds into it. So this is generally a good halfway point in the run to gauge the relative pace of the two runners. So Tylenol finished with a 2:19 as Kid was coming up on about 40 seconds. So it's looking like Tylenol is approximately a minute 40 ahead of Kid, which is quite a bit of time to make up, but it's absolutely not beyond reason. There is still a lot that can go wrong in any individual run, especially in the immediately upcoming stages, which are Tails' Hidden Base, Sonic's Pyramid Cave, and Knuckles' Death Chamber, also known as the trifecta of desert stages, and for a lot of runners, some of the most unfriendly stages to actually attempt. Kid actually using a little bit of time to go backwards and showcase some backwards driving strats. This is some nice swag. But yeah, these stages here are, for a lot of runners, the most technical and demanding stages in the run, not counting the major skips at the very end of the run. So Tylenol getting a pretty nice start to Hidden Base. This stage demands a lot of hover jumps to get into some unintended spots, which you've already seen. He's gone through a couple of non-solid walls, and you also need to collapse a lot of these dynamite pillars to keep progressing. So he's just going to cut off this corner here with a hover jump. He's lacking a little bit on the height, but still thankfully makes it. And let's see if he's going to collapse these dynamites, or... Yes, he is. He's choosing to collapse these dynamites. You can either collapse those, or you can just progress by hover jumping over the gap, but it's a very precise hover jump that's required to make the full distance. So he's getting through Hidden Base in fairly nice style so far. No real immediate mistakes. And he's going to come up on this small maze section, which you can again skip a little bit over with a very precisely placed hover jump. He gets the hover jump off the door, but the quality isn't quite good enough to let him get over there, so that's a little unfortunate. Thankfully, it's not a major mistake, and it's easy to recover from. But he's still getting through the stage fairly cleanly. There is a small out of bounds that's going to be done here, and he does need to take a little bit of care to avoid dying in this sand pit. There are a few jumps required here that can all risk a death if done wrong or in the wrong spot. Thankfully, he's out of bounds, and he's going to get back in very easily from there. And now he just needs to avoid dying in this last room, which again is possible because there's a lot of quicksand around, and he'll be closing out Hidden Base with what looks like about a 2-minute time. Meanwhile, Kid is also moving for his own Hidden Base, using a little bit of a different strat to get on top there as Tylenol did, but with a little less risk. He's going for a GC skip variant. This is nice. Which one is he going for? He's going for the full GC skip, which, wow, very nice. That is a very precise corner clip, which I don't attempt that very frequently, because oh man, no, he got dragged down by the wall after getting the skip. The long and short of that skip is that, as you just saw, if Tails is hovering and contacts a wall, it drags him down very quickly, but in that corner, if you contact both walls at the exact same time, they won't drag you down and you can actually clip straight through, but it's extremely precise. It looks like he's going for it again. No, okay, he messed up his pause hover, so he's just bailing out. Again, you really need to know how to bail out in this game, and instead he's going for the axle jump over this fence, which is considerably easier. It's a tight hover jump, but it's much less risky. And Tylenol, meanwhile, is in his Pyramid Cave. He's got a fairly decent start, and he's coming up on the bounce bracelet, which is going to let Sonic use the super bounce technique, which you just saw there. If you are moving towards a wall and then you bounce before hitting the wall, the game will actually immediately convert all of your horizontal momentum into vertical momentum. And since you can force Sonic to go pretty fast, that means you can also force Sonic to go pretty high. And he's also lining up for a door skip here. He's struggling a little. This door skip is very, very precise, but he does get it second try, thankfully. It's literally just going through the gap between the wall and the door, it's just very, very small, so you need a lot of speed and a very precise position so that the game will actually clip you through. And after the second hallway, we're going to see if he's going to go for snake skip. Yeah, he took a little bit of time to go for the checkpoint there, so he definitely wants that checkpoint, as this trick right here is quite easy to die on, and it's a lot more precise than it looks. He needs to get on this snake, which he was struggling a little bit with there, and then you can skew your gravity and use the bounce to maintain that skewed gravity to fall virtually sideways, which you use to skip a little looped section there. There's going to be one more super bounce right here, followed by one more gravity bounce, and that will close out Tylenol's pyramid cave as long as he doesn't make any major mistakes. Oh, his position is... okay. He managed to bail out halfway through that loop skip. He wasn't in the correct position to stay on the side of that loop, and then he very wisely decided not to try and clutch it and fully go for it, because it's very easy to die there, and a death in that specific spot sends you all the way back to the checkpoint that he grabbed before the snake skip, which is almost like a minute behind that spot. So that's a very bad spot to take a death on. So the runners are currently maintaining about the same sort of gap. They're like about a stage apart, and Tylenol is entering Death Chamber. Knuckles is Desert Stage. Knuckles definitely gets the short end of the stick here, with Death Chamber being the most unfriendly Knuckles stage in the run by quite a wide margin. There's a couple of free pieces you can check for at the start, but he didn't get either of them, and now the runner is simply subject to the possibility of getting some really awful piece sets, because this stage is very convoluted and has a lot of different sections that are very widely spaced apart. So much so that after getting that first piece, he's actually taking a death here to teleport back to the red room, since you're actually likely to get some pretty nice piece sets after that. He's gotten Triangle Flame, which is in the blue room, so if he'd gotten that piece before respawning, it wouldn't really have been worth it, but sometimes you can even get pieces that are in the red room on the respawn. That's more likely to happen with a first piece that's from the blue room rather than the green room though. So when doing green room death strats like this, we tend to just take whatever piece we get rather than sit and wait for a death piece in red. And now he's going back towards the green room. This is definitely really, really poor RNG for Tylenol, and this isn't his fault. Green first piece to blue, back to red-green is really not very good. There's a lot of distance being covered here, and there's not too much that can be done about it. Although he is attempting a clip out here to get to this next piece more quickly, since you need to get to this adjoining passage and then use this painting warp to teleport to this secret room. He's getting Find the Scorpion hiding in the hole with a 127, albeit with a death, so it's closer to being like a probably a 135. Kid, meanwhile, is trying to close out his pyramid cave. Was struggling a little with the first loop skip, and now he's struggling against the camera. This entire game is a struggle, honestly. They both get the snake rail there, though, which is quite difficult to get since there's a lot of like polygons and angles at work there, which can really interfere with your ability to actually take a straight line there. They can even give you some unwanted skewed gravity and almost force a death in some cases. So Kid's closing out his pyramid cave as Tylenol enters his King Boom Boo. And this is a boss which is challenging for new runners, but is really worth getting to grips with, as casually, a lot of players would take this boss in several cycles, getting a hit on him, and then he runs away too quick to keep up with. But if your angle of movement is very precise, you can actually keep up with him, and you can kill him in a single cycle, which both runners are going to be aiming for here. Tylenol's looking pretty good. He just needs to make sure to not be too far behind or too far ahead. Both of those can kill the one cycle, but he's got it pretty comfortably. That's very nice. Kid, meanwhile, is going through his own death chamber, whilst Tylenol is about to go straight from King Boom Boo into Egg Golem, which a lot of runners pretty much agree is the most difficult boss in the game. It uses Sonic's Super Bounce tech shown in Pyramid Cave, but there is barely any room to perform it on these platforms. As I mentioned, you do need to do the bounces before you hit the adjacent wall, which in this situation is about 5 frames, so it's definitely not easy to do. Tylenol's already taken a restart at the beginning of the fight, and he's really struggling to get any further super bounces, so he's actually trying to take some safer hits by going up the back end, which is the intended manner to take this boss. He was lucky to not get a spinning cycle there, as he ended up behind the boss, which is typically what causes that when he starts attacking next. But yeah, he's really just struggling to land on egg wall, and these super bounces are very, very unforgiving. And it's very easy to just not get your inputs close enough together and fall into the sand as he's doing here, so there's definitely a bit of calculation involved in Egg Golem with being able to tell what your condition with super bouncing is at that time and wondering if it's really worth repeatedly attempting, since if you're going to miss as many bounces as this, it is honestly faster to just go for the safe hits, which he largely ended up going for throughout that fight, closing out with a time of 112. And for reference, if you don't bother attempting any super bounces and just go for a clean fight without any advanced strats, you can finish that fight in about 50 seconds. So it is easy to bleed time by getting too greedy with your bounce attempts. Kid, meanwhile, is closing out Death Chamber with a time of about 2 minutes, and he's also going to be moving on to King Boom Boo and an Egg Golem just now, while Tylenol is starting the space stages with Eternal Engine. And just like Mission Street, this is an entirely cycle-based stage. Well, it's not strictly correct to say it's entirely cycle-based, but it's cycle-based up to the point where we're actually going to stop playing the level proper. Because halfway through the stage, there is a major skip, a clip out, so that you can go straight out of bounds, fall underneath the stage, and then fly straight to the goal ring from there on out, which both runners are definitely going to be attempting. But until that point, the objective that both runners are going for here is to meet the cycle just before that point. Tylenol may be on pace for it if the rest of the stage goes very, very well. He's already lost bits of time here and there to the various sections of the stage, which is very easy to do. This is a challenging stage to play optimally. Yeah, this is looking like he's going to need a very, very clean section here in order to make the first cycle. The cycle only wastes about 8 seconds if missed though, so it's nothing major. It's just disappointing to just about miss the cycle and then need to wait. He did get the early chaos kill there, or as I like to call it, the chaos spear, by jumping and no-scoping, but unfortunately it's still not enough to meet this cycle. You can see the platform going down here, that's what he wanted to meet there. So you can see that he was just barely too slow for it. If he'd been like a second faster, that would have been on. Fortunately, he does get a first try clip out. The box in the corner there, that's what you want to clip out against, and there's a couple of methods to do it. You can either use a very precise position and time a jump into it, or you can actually use the door to push you out, which is what Tylenol did. And you do need the correct angle to force that as well, so very well calculated on Tylenol's part. And he's hopefully from here just going to be progressing to the end of Eternal Engine, well, not normally, but as normally as can be hoped for when this skip is being used. And then he'll just be able to clip into the back of the goal ring and end the stage. Kid, meanwhile, is trying his own Egg Golem, and he's definitely cutting his losses more than Tylenol was, and he's going for more normal hits without trying to squeeze too many super bounces. The result being that it looks like he's going to pick up some time here. Yeah, this looks like it's going to be about a minute. So a pretty clean affair from Kid. Obviously not really any super bounce hits gotten, but not much time lost for the strats used either, which is nice. And Tylenol, meanwhile, has gotten his Eternal Engine skip, so he's going to be moving on to Knuckles' final stage, Meteor Herd. Whereas Death Chamber was a really convoluted, difficult stage, Meteor Herd is kind of the opposite. This stage is really, really large, but it's also very open and easy to navigate as long as you know where you're going, like if you know the piece locations. And it looks like Tylenol does as he goes for his first piece very quickly. He's got a second piece right in the middle of the stage, which is fairly friendly. He could get a lot of pretty good locations that are accessible from this second piece. Dithering a little bit with which direction to go at first, but he again knows exactly where to go for this. And now he just needs to see where his last piece is going to be. There are a handful of hint monitors fairly close by. And he's going to... oh, nice. I know exactly where this piece is. Yeah, just take the spring and it's right over here. That was a very nice piece set, actually. Bottom to middle is a lot better than what you can potentially get in that stage. So finishing out the RNG in the run with a sub 50 Meteor Herd, I'm pretty sure Tylenol will be pretty happy with that, and Kid has definitely got an uphill battle from here on out. There is I don't want to say it's impossible, but Tylenol needs to start making some major mistakes in order for Kid to be able to pull back this time loss. Since Tylenol is a good stage ahead, but he does have the 2 last main stages coming up, Crazy Gadget and Final Rush, and they do both have major skips, which both take time to execute and cost a lot of time if messed up. Before that, he's got to fight Rouge, Knuckles' last boss. And I believe he's going to grab a ring first. No, he's going for a ringless first hit, which is nice. And now from here on out, as long as you just keep either repeatedly drill diving or just staying airborne, Rouge doesn't really do much of anything and just sits there and lets you kill her. Kid, meanwhile, has gotten his own EE clip out, so he's going to be moving towards the end of Eternal Engine, and as long as he judges his position correctly, he shouldn't have any problems landing this. So Tylenol entering Crazy Gadget, I think it's probably too much to assume that he would attempt CGSS, Crazy Gadget skip, or Super Skip, depending on who you ask. I believe we're probably just going to see normal Crazy Gadget skip, which is easier, but still definitely not free, and has a lot of constituent parts of it that can kill you if performed wrong at all. So we're definitely just going to have to wait and see how this goes when he reaches that spot. Getting through Crazy Gadget so far relatively quickly, a bit of a stumbling block near those boxes though, and he does make sure to get that checkpoint because this is where the skip is performed, and as I say, it's high risk. He's going for a checkpoint and he's going around the left side, so this is Crazy Gadget skip, the quote-unquote easier one. Although, you know, it's all relative, just depending on how the runner performs it. He's gotten past the first part, which is the initial spin dash jump, but he now needs to take a backup hit against this Artificial Chaos. And he's entering the acid room now with 0 rings, so depending on how he approaches this, this could be dangerous. Since you need to come very close to this acid, which can kill you. Yeah, you can see you're very close there, and you need to do that in order to get up to this enemy to unlock the door. But he's doing pretty well so far. And he's going to be doing the final fall into the goal ring just now. Which, again, this is also difficult. This is absolutely not free. You just bounce through this wall, and through this wall that he's falling towards, the goal ring is in a specific spot. He looks like... Yeah, I didn't think that looked correct. So, yeah, this is what I mean. This is a chance for Kids to pull back some time if Tylenol doesn't start hitting this pronto. He does, however, have pretty bad RNG at the start of this Meteor Herd. He started with between 2 rotating beacons, which runners agree is one of the worst first pieces to see, and it's followed up by one of the worst second pieces to see. From the opposite side of the bottom right up to the top of the stage, this is not a particularly good layout so far, and he's going to need a very good piece 3 to mitigate the poor RNG here. He just needs to go down for a hint here, or he can just go for the hint over here as well. Jump from the start. So this is in the middle of the stage. It can be in a couple of different spots, but they're all in the same basic area. He's struggling to find where he needs to go though. Yeah, he's in the right spot now. So he's got the middle one based on the radar being green at this point. He's misjudged which one he needs to go for though, unfortunately. That's the one that it would be had the radar been yellow when taking the spring. But he's found it now, and Tylenol has another attempt at hitting the goal ring. He's a little too far to the left. Yeah, Tylenol is just struggling to gauge his position on Crazy Gadget skip. And he's losing lives, so Kid is making back all this time, potentially. Unless Tylenol gets this now. He's actually choosing to not go for CGS now. Wow. If Kid can get CGS, this is definitely an opportunity to close the rest of the gap. We can be about equal entering Final Rush at this point. Tylenol having a couple of attempts at CGS, and he's just kind of lost his nerve now. He just prefers to not risk any additional mistakes and do the stage normally, and this is quite a bit longer than going without the skip. So Kid is also ringless on Rouge with a bit of a hairy start, but he's going to close it out fine, and he is going to also be entering Crazy Gadget, and assuming he goes for the skip, as I say, if he goes for the skip and gets it first try, both of our runners are going to be in approximately the same place when this stage ends. Wow. Tylenol struggling a little with the skipless Crazy Gadget. If not going for the skip, this is honestly a very technical stage with a lot of things to consider. So we're now going to see what Kid's game plan is. Just as I said with Tylenol, I really don't think we're going to see a CGSS from Kid. That is a very advanced trick that, again, only the top bracket of runners tend to go for, kind of like Green Forest Wall Run. But CGS is not out of the question. So if he gets the left facing gravity switch, then we could be seeing a bit of a change. Somehow I don't think so now, because yes, okay, he's going to skip this. He didn't backtrack to get the missed checkpoint, which indicated to me that he wasn't going for the skip, because you saw how risky it was when Tylenol was attempting it. So to attempt it without an active checkpoint is either an act of great confidence or an act of risk. I will put it like that. That's the politest way I can put it. Tylenol, though, is finishing out his crazy gadget, and if Kid is not doing CGS, then we're going to need to see a similar set of mistakes from that CGS on Tylenol's FR in order for Kid to make up the rest of the time. And I get a feeling now that Tylenol is going to be really focused on just playing as solidly and consistently as possible to prevent any more time bleed. Struggling a little on Eggman, but he's managing to keep the fight under enough control to still finish the fight out. The main thing on that boss is just to not panic and to follow the rules of engagement as it is. There's definitely correct ways and wrong ways to fight that boss. So all Tylenol needs to do now is hit the last major skip of the run and defeat the last boss of the run, Shadow 2. Final Rush is easier to execute than Crazy Gadget Skip, I would say, but it's still definitely not risk-free, and he actually takes a mistake at the start of the stage, so 2 lives remaining. Okay, looking good so far. Wants to preferably not avoid the checkpoint here. He's got it, nice. And Kid's finished out his Crazy Gadget. Tylenol getting the jump to start FR skip, so Tylenol's looking pretty good to get this. He's gone for the bounceless variant, albeit a high bounceless variant, which I don't really advocate for much anymore, but performing tricks in this game really comes more down to which you're comfortable performing than anything else. So as long as he's gauged this correctly, maintaining his skewed gravity long enough to get around all the kill planes, but not so long as to go too far away from the goal ring, then he will be falling right towards the end of the stage right now, and he will be in good spot to just fall straight into the goal ring. Kid, meanwhile, is doing his own Eggman 2 and just making sure to misdirect his attacks and get far enough away that he doesn't punch him, and he's just taking the rest of this fight very safely. And that's it, yeah. Definitely a conservative Eggman 2, but again, when you just want to avoid mistakes, it's definitely the correct path to take. Tylenol actually taking a pause hover there to try and extend his height, because he really doesn't have too much height to play with here. It's going to be enough, but that was close. You can see that there isn't really much room for error in how far away you are from the goal ring for FR skip, and he needed to take every measure there to gain some extra height to make sure that he made it there. He paused the game and just made sure to be holding the A button after unpausing, which actually causes Sonic to hover for a little bit longer than normal. Oh, Kid is... He got a really bad contact on that slope and an unwanted light dash there, though, which caused a bad spot there on that final rush, and he didn't have the checkpoint either, so he restarts. Tylenol, meanwhile, is coming up to his final boss, Shadow 2, and getting the first hit. He only needs to get 5 hits here to finish the run, and he's looking like he's in a decent spot. He went a little too early, but he's getting bounce hits. He is going to need to bail out here, though. Oh, he's finished! He actually got that faster than I anticipated, so he's actually finishing out in style with a 43-34. I kind of missed that finish altogether. Wow, very nice. Kid, meanwhile, is on his own FR skip, so yeah, maintaining the about a stage gap. And he's turned, and it looks like he has just hit the kill plane. I thought he'd gone far enough to avoid that, but unfortunately that's what happens when you don't fall horizontally for long enough. That's the entire point that we do this, because that is the kill plane that you're trying to avoid. And you just want to also not fall so far out that once you turn left, you would no longer be able to hit the goal ring. So Kid, with his second attempt at this, probably just going to be a little more conservative with when he turns, or the angle that he's turning at. he's still hitting the kill plane a little. He's either resetting his gravity a little early, or he is... Oh, he's actually restarting because he's not confident about using the in-game timer as a Q anymore. Wow. He must assume getting the same sort of pace from the start of the stage so that he can actually use the in-game timer to tell when to turn, which isn't really a method that I typically advise, since you can just use the in-game timer after the camera pans around right here, count up like 16, 17 seconds from there, but again, you really need to use what you're comfortable with in this run. So to avoid that kill plane, he either needs to maintain the skewed gravity for slightly longer, or once he resets his gravity, he just needs to turn left a bit slower, because he's turning left very aggressively there and very quickly. It looks like he's good this time though, so he is past the kill planes and now he's just making a straight fall towards the goal ring. Hopefully he has enough height to make it there. We won't really know until the level comes back into view, which will probably be about 108 on the clock, I want to say. 107, 108 is what I'm predicting. Oh man, I was wrong. No, it's over. And there's one last kill plane that the runners actually need to avoid here, which he's going around the right-hand side of this pillar because there is a kill plane behind it around the middle, so runners do just need to know how to avoid that. He does have a little more height than Tylenol though, so he has an easier time making it to the goal ring and finishing out with a 127. And so he's now just going to need to do the Shadow 2 fight of his own. Same strat that Tylenol used, albeit Kid is going to want to not have to bounce against Shadow if he doesn't have to, since the fight is starting to get a little out of control at that point. So we're now going to see what sort of Shadow 2 fight Kid has. And this is a fight that can rapidly get out of control. So you also really need to know how to back up and bail out against this boss, just like the rest of the run. He does get the first hit. 2, 3, 4. These are nicely timed. Now, okay, this is what I mean. He needs to know how to recover this. So Shadow's going to chaos control, but that's fine. The main thing is that he's still alive and he can retry once Shadow teleports. He's actually gone for the safe hit. Once Shadow gets far enough ahead, he just uses Chaos Spear like that and becomes vulnerable. That's the intended way to take the boss, and I definitely don't blame that decision. Getting a free last hit and closing out the 47-01. So a 43 versus a 47. For a long time, that was a really nicely and closely contested race. Definitely congratulations to both of our racers, and especially to Tylenol for winning. That was a very entertaining race. And I believe that's all that we have tonight for Sonic Adventure 2.
Awesome job, Tails.
Yeah, from what I'm seeing, that looks like it's all that we have for tonight, but we will be back over the next couple of days. Over the next 3 days at least, we have schedules for the races. And that is going to be it for our runners for tonight though. So again, congratulations to Tylenol for winning. And congratulations to both of them really for putting on an entertaining race. It was very good and I was very glad to be able to commentate that. But as I say, that is going to be it from us tonight. So I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow for hopefully some more commentary.